Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our November Town Hall. All 511 of our members and maybe some non-members too. We'd love you to be members, by the way. I'm Jackie Brown. I'm the CEO of MACPA, and we're really glad you're here. I was thinking, looking at the topic of this town hall, we've all heard about the Great Resignation, right, and the war for talent in the CPA profession. And now on the horizon, all the changes that new candidates will be facing as they become CPAs. That's what we're going to learn more about tonight or today. But tonight, we're actually celebrating with our swearing in group of new CPAs who persevered through the pandemic to earn that credential. And now everything they did is going to be very different for the next group of CPAs. So we're glad you're here because I think it's important for the profession, past, present, and future, to understand CPA evolution so that you can help and guide the next generation of the profession, right? And we have three amazing guests here, really ready to have a conversation about what that's going to look like. And they have some inside perspectives that they'll bring too. So we're really excited to have them here. And we're grateful for two sponsors too for this event. Profix and Zero, and we're going to hear about them later. But next, and of course, we always start with getting some insight from all of you and asking you to type into your browser, macpa.cnf.io. We're going to do some quick polls. So go ahead and open those up. And as you know, if you we've got some new questions too, by the way. We're going to ask you not just for the good news we always ask, but we're going to ask where you work, your role, your experience, previous town hall experience. So some of you who have been here before know that we always start with this good news. And then we're going to leave this last one open throughout, but we want to get some feedback from you about topics that you'd like to have in future town halls. So we're always kind of looking ahead, assessing what trends and things our members might need to know more about, but we want to hear from you too. So that's a new question in there. But really, let's start with the good news. And we've been doing this at staff meetings for several years, and then in our regular committee meetings, board meetings. In fact, Tuesday, I guess, we had our foundation board meeting, and the board members now come into these meetings knowing that they're going to have some good, we're going to ask them for some good news. And, sometimes it's hard to come up with good news, either in the moment, or, maybe things are just having kind of a hard day. So one of our board members told a story that just made me smile. He said he was running in to get to the board meeting in time. And he said to his wife, as he was grabbing a yogurt, running through the kitchen, he goes, "I got to have good news for this meeting." And she said, "Oh, just tell him you have a beautiful wife who supports you in everything you do." So that was his good news. So I give you that as an example of, it doesn't have to be anything profound. And while you're doing that too, I'll tell you, MACPA is doing something new this year for the holiday season. We're going to be kicking it off soon. So be on the lookout for the MACPA Grateful campaign. And what we're going to do is our team, and we hope members, will share with us things that they're grateful for. So we're coming into the season of Thanksgiving and holidays, and everybody knows it's been a tough couple of years. And so we are going to share with you, and we hope you'll share with us, some of your holiday traditions, things you love to do, things you love to cook, and even give us a recipe for that. Trips you take, colleagues and clients, or just things you do that you're grateful for this time of year. So anyway, look for more about that. And I am going to open up Conferences.io and see what kind of good news we're getting. This is awesome. Well, the first one is 2 people have retired. That is great news. But the next one I love the most, 1 year cancer-free. I have several friends right now struggling with that. One that's going to get her results back today. So that's amazing good news. Grandchildren are always good news. Kids coming home for Thanksgiving, promotions. Yep, and booster shots. Build back better reconciliation, build changes. Seem manageable. We need something that's manageable these days, don't we? Business is growing, and somebody said celebrating new CPAs tonight. Yep. Birthdays, companies are doing well, family gatherings. You look at this and it just sets a tone. Whatever you came running into this town hall with, the last phone call, the last conversation, when you look at this list, somebody's going on a getaway, another vacation, it just puts you in a spot of, you know what, there is good news. You can pause. We can remember these things, right? So I will let you continue to put some good news in there, and be sure to take a look at that last poll too and give us some other ideas. But I'm going to move on to the next slide. And again, if you come to our town halls, you see this a lot. We started this in June with, we call it MACPA 3.0. And just like you, we have been reimagining our business and focusing on members and focusing on this promise, this commitment to you. It's what we do. And it starts with community, right? And this is a community, by the way. When you come to these town halls, we're creating collaborative member-led networks. We want that feedback from you, and we're bringing members to this panel, and we are a community. Resources, professional development, advocacy. CPA Day is coming up January 20th. It's virtual again this year. That means you can all participate, and there's some CPE baked into that too, but never been more important to be in front of our legislators, right? But at the core of it all, what we do in those 4 pillars of our promise is our purpose. So leading and transforming our profession, Maryland first, and making a positive impact. We connect, protect, and help a CPA-led profession achieve success. Our values: collaboration, community, L greater than C, anticipation and innovation, trust, and inclusivity. And then our focus: creating communities of interest, insight, and innovation to secure a future-ready profession in Maryland. That's what we do for our members and with our members, and today's the perfect example of that. So next slide. This is just a part of our team. We have 16 people on staff at MACPA. This is our leadership team. Skip Velatko's our CFO and CPA. Bill Sheridan's on here today, our Chief Communications Officer. Laura Swan's our controller, also a CPA. Dee Sullivan's behind the scene making all this work, our Director of Learning. You're going to meet Rebecca Brown, Director of Development. She's a CPA. Mary Beth Halpern, you may all know because she's Director of Technical and Legislative Regulatory, all things State Board and technical standards. And then Blue Ocean Ideas, Greg Rittler is on our leadership team to do all our technology and marketing. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill, who I just introduced, and have him talk through this slide, which are some important partners that are here for you as well.
Yeah, these are, they're more than sponsors, really. We call them our preferred providers. They're partners. We like to think of them as partners, right? These relationships truly are partnerships in our mind, and they offer also our profession. If you were on the, I think it was the September town hall, we devoted a good chunk of that town hall meeting to some of the things that our preferred providers do on behalf of the profession. So, we've built some great partnerships with these folks, and they're doing some things that we think can help you all become a little bit more future ready and kind of thrive in this chaotic world that we're living in. So, and help is really the key word here. If you talk to these folks, they truly want to help this profession. So please reach out to them, see what they can do for you, because they want to do that for you. And as Jackie said, I guess next slide, Rebecca, we've got a couple of partners who are sponsoring today's town hall, and we thank them for that. The first is Profix. Profix began as a software distributor, and then after years of implementing financial applications, the company's founders recognized the need for an innovative planning and reporting system, and Profix, the company's corporate performance management platform, was born out of that. So moving beyond the day-to-day to create bold strategic contributions, Profix helps financial professionals reframe their everyday challenges into opportunities. And at 11 o'clock today, after the town hall meeting, you're going to have another opportunity for some complimentary learning. Profix's director, Wayne Slater, is going to be with us at 11 to present a session entitled The Better Way to Budget, Plan, and Report. So that's Profix. And then our second sponsor for today is Xero. I've worked with the folks at Xero for a number of years now, and I just love their tagline. It basically boils down to making accounting software beautiful. And I think that that's awesome. So they really were born in the cloud, Xero was. And it is. It's a beautiful, easy to use platform for small businesses and their advisors. They've got some time-saving tools and solutions that put data entry kind of on autopilot for you. Xero improves efficiencies for everyone. You can also customize your Xero experience with connections to a thriving ecosystem of more than 800 third-party apps and more than 200 connections to banks and financial service providers. And they will also be offering some complimentary learning today after the town hall meeting at 10 o'clock. They will be with us to provide a session entitled CAS, What is it and why it matters? Because it does. And so our thanks today to the folks from Profix and Xero for helping bring this to you.
And I want to thank our 100% member organizations that really help MACPA stay at the forefront, especially important in our advocacy efforts in Annapolis as we show our leaders in Annapolis the force that CPAs are and the value of what we do in our profession. I'm going to jump real quick to the Conferences.io just to show who we have in the room. Oh, it's really tiny on my screen. Hopefully you all see it a little bit better after you answer the question. I think you're able to see it a little bit better, but we have a good mix. Looks like some public accounting, whether sole practitioner or mid-size or smaller firms, 20% in private accounting, working as those corporate accounting and finance folks. And gosh, 10% of you are retired. Wow. Well, we are jealous a little bit, but I thank you for still being on here and wanting to continue to learn about the profession and what you can do and keep that rate of learning greater than the rate of change, even though you're retired. This profession is one that is one of those lifetime professions, right? You might not be practicing anymore, but it's a community, right? And so thank you for continuing to be part of our community. Let's see, we have, 24% of you at that senior manager, director level, and 17, as soon as I say it, I knew I was going to move. But gosh, yeah, a lot of you in those top line positions. So we really thank you for taking the time to be here too, because I think this is one of those topics that's really important for the leadership of our profession to know and to set an example with. And then I think the last question, oh yes, experience. So last time we did this, I think we had 20 plus years and there was 80% of you. So I thought, I think I need to break that number up. So I did 20 to 30 and 30 plus, and wow, still seeing a significant amount of experience on this town hall. So thank you for that. I also want to address real quickly, yes, you can still register for the webinars that are after this. You should be able to do that right when this ends, or if you open up another browser, don't leave this tab because you want to hit those little CPE checks, but you can register. Someone asked about getting accounting as part of STEM or maybe changing it to STEAM. There's actually a bill in Congress right now going after that. So we'll keep you updated on that. And then someone asked about seeing a tax bill before January 1st. I wish I could predict what Congress would do because I would be rich. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know the answer that next month, our December town hall is actually going to focus on tax, and we're going to have Ed Carl, who is with the AICPA's tax group. I believe he's a VP or a director and also an MACPA member, join us to kind of talk through some of the implications of that. So stay tuned for that. The last question I think we had, we wanted to see how many people had attended a town hall or what your experience was. So we have a couple new first timers. So thank you so much for joining us. We have a couple people that have attended a few, and we got our regulars. So thank you for being those regulars too. We so enjoy this, being able to talk to you. Of course, at some point we'd love to talk to you in person as well. But these 1 hour shorter time periods, we hope bring you that, just in time information in a really convenient way. So with that, I'm going to go back to our slide deck, and I am going to set up our conversation for this morning. So if you've been with us, those regular attenders know that we like to use something called the Burris Hard Trend Framework when we're thinking about the future of our profession and thinking of trends in particular. And we typically pick on one of the categories of hard trends to really kind of dive deep into during our town halls, because hard trends, as Daniel Burris would say, are future facts. So when we can base our strategy on them, you know, there's a lesser degree of uncertainty and better success, right? And so today we're going to focus on demographics. But I have actually really good news about this one. The pipeline and talent challenges that we as a profession are facing are actually not hard trends. They are what Daniel Burris would call soft trends, because they can be influenced. And I will tell you also, and maybe as an encouragement, that this is not just something facing our profession. I mean, if you go onto any news site, the Great Resignation, you walk into any restaurant these days, any really place where they hire people, there is a help wanted sign, right? So while we can't change maybe hard trends of baby boomers leaving the profession and retiring, or the actual number of 40-year-old tax senior managers, which I know you would all love to find right now, we can influence the pipeline and the retention of the people that we have now. So this morning, we're going to talk through that soft trend. And I have, as Jackie mentioned, 3 amazing guests to provide their unique perspective and insights. And these are all MACPA members and just fantastic volunteer leaders. So first, we have Anup Mehta. Anup is a past chair of MACPA not too long ago, and he is the current vice chair of AICPA. And so in just a few months, Anup will take the stage as AICPA's chair, and just the second ethnic minority chair of the AICPA, and the second chair from Maryland. So we are super proud of Anup and excited to have him on in that leadership role. He also serves on our MACPA Foundation board, and in his spare time, he has a day job. I'm not sure when he does it, but he is the chief strategist at Analytical Mechanics Associates. Next, we have MACPA champion and passionate volunteer, Nicole Skylar. Nicole is an MACPA Leadership Academy alum, and she's a future CPA. So she's studying for her exams now. She's a senior accountant at Gary R. Brazell and Associates. And so she's going to provide a really unique perspective as we talk about this licensure process and what it takes to become a CPA these days. And then finally, we have Dr. Jan Williams. Dr. Williams is the 2015 MACPA Women to Watch Award winner. She's a professor at the University of Baltimore. She's past president of the Mid-Atlantic region of AAA, the American Accounting Association, and she is the current educator member of the Maryland Board of Public Accountancy. Amazing advocate and leader in our profession, and just wealth of knowledge. So we are really excited to have the 3 of them here today. I'm going to walk through a couple slides just to set some context, and I invite them to unmute because I have them here in the Zoom room with me and kind of add their perspectives. But I just wanted to set some context about where we are as a profession in terms of our pipeline. So I shared this briefly at our June town hall, but these 3 charts come from AICPA's 2019 supply and demand report. And they do this about every 2 to 3 years. So it's actually, they're working on the release now for the spring of 2022. But you can see here, there's a 4% decrease. This was back in 2018 data of accounting graduates. And so that was the 3rd year in a row with that kind of a decrease. And at AICPA Council, actually last month, the CEO of AICPA's public accounting division, Sue Coffey, indicated that preliminary data was suggesting that while other college majors had started to somewhat recover from the impact of the pandemic, the accounting major didn't appear to be recovering. And so that's what we're consistently seeing from our Maryland educators as well. And it's real cause for concern. The bottom graphs represent the number of new CPAs and CPA candidates, or actually, I'm sorry, the first graph there on the bottom is new CPA candidates, and the second is CPA exam passers. So those two spikes that you see on there, those are because of new exams coming out. So as you probably have advised someone in the past, the new exams coming out, go get it done while we know what the exam looks like now. So in addition to the decline in those overall majors, we're seeing that only really about a third of accounting graduates are actually becoming CPAs. So that's national data, and that's slightly out of date right now. But this is the updated numbers actually from what I even showed you in June in regards to what is happening in Maryland. So tonight we will swear in and celebrate those new CPAs in Maryland over the last 2 years, since we couldn't do it last year with the pandemic. But you can see we have a decline here in Maryland as well since that 2017 spike because of the new exam. Now, of course, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say back at COVID. It's the like perfect excuse for anything that goes wrong with these days, right? But with the declining enrollments as well, will this trend continue? I don't want to wait for us to find out. I want to take action now and really start to build that pipeline. I want to give you some good news, or at least some homework. So what can we really do about it? The Illinois Society of CPAs did some really amazing research that they called the decoding of the decline. I'd encourage you to Google that and read the entire report, but I pulled some things out of it that I thought were really relevant and important for us as well. Now, this is all based on data in their state, but I really do believe it probably is universal. The survey was targeted at accounting students, accounting graduates, and professionals under the age of 35. It included CPAs and non-CPAs. And so when they were asked who really influenced their decision to either pursue or not pursue the CPA license after their self, which kind of, I was surprised that was even an option. Of course, you were gonna influence your own decision, but their employer and their professor were number 1 and 2. And so unfortunately, if you look, that little tiny 5% was professional associations like MACPA. And so we need your help in growing the pipeline. And so that's what we really want to equip you with today. Next, they surveyed some of the top challenges that students, CPAs, CPA candidates, those that had decided to abandon the process altogether, really faced. And so surprisingly, among those that started the process but then abandoned it at some point in their career, the number one reason, or the number one reason that we often think is a barrier, is the 150 hours. I get that question probably several times, and I probably, if it's not in the chat right now or the social Q&A right now, it might come up if I hadn't said this. It didn't even make the top 10 of those who decided not to pursue or abandon the process. Overwhelmingly, and maybe not surprisingly, time commitment was really the number one challenge. And so I think as a profession, we might be able to do something about this. Now, I know this is especially hard because we have this perfect storm going on right now of the great resignation, the declining pipeline, and increasing complexity of regulation, right? The tax season that never really ended. The other reason why this, I think, might be hard is how the exam taking process has changed. So because most of you said that you were 20 or 30 years in the profession, most of you took the exam when it was only offered twice a year, right? And when it was only offered twice a year, it was more likely to be clearly known who in the organization, who in the firm was studying for and taking the exam, right? And that kind of created culture, whether it was intentional or not. When we moved to year-round testing, but with blackout windows, I think some of that culture remained, but it slowed down a little bit. People were a little more disconnected, like, oh yeah, you're taking it on a computer. I took it, on paper in the Cow Palace at the fairgrounds. I don't really know how to mentor you or help you in that process. So now we have continuous testing, which of course is a great benefit, especially when we have that 18-month window. But I recognize that there's a risk there that some of that culture of the organization and that CPA exam culture gets lost. And so you might not know who is studying for the exam in your organization, or when they have an exam coming up, like really quickly, like the next weekend. And so you might not know to check in on them, encourage them, schedule them differently that week, perhaps. So that just really kind of prompted some of this conversation we wanted to have. When you look at those who actually went through the process, became a CPA, or at least are still on the process, forging ahead, work time commitments was still the #1 challenge. But #4 challenge also prompted me to say, we need to have a town hall on this topic, not just because it's changing with the CPA exam, but the #4 challenge was navigating the exam application. And so I think that might tie back to that culture thing again, because it's not that the exam application has changed dramatically, right? Now it might be online, it might be a little faster, but I think what maybe has changed is that mentor perhaps relationship inside the organization that goes, okay, here's the tips and tricks to make sure you don't do this in your application, and make sure you have this class and this class. There's just not that culture around it. So what I'm going to do is I want to pause for a second first and see if any of our panelists have any insights. Nicole, I'm thinking of you particularly as someone who's continuing in the process right now. What is your #1 challenge? What are you facing that really is, you're overcoming, thankfully, but what are you facing that you think could be made better?
Yeah, I definitely agree. The exam application is something that when I applied a couple years ago, it was a large hurdle that I needed to get over. There was a lot of back and forth. There was questions that I'm submitting certain courses, and the board is saying, well, no, that doesn't meet our criteria because we don't know enough about it. So I had to go back, and this was years after. It was a one-time course, so information that was available was just limited. So the exam application was definitely something that just the knowledge behind what was accepted and what wasn't, that was a little bit challenging to navigate, but I got past that. It was a couple months to get through, but I got past that. So the second hardest thing now that I'm experiencing is definitely the time commitments. I'm looking at these charts that you're putting up here, Rebecca, and they are speaking to me 1000%. The time commitments between the personal things that you want to do or need to do and your workload time commitments. It's difficult for a young professional to say, hey, I need some time to do this. I need to come in at 9, I need to leave at 5, and I need to step away and take time to do the things that I need to do to pass the exam. And I know it sounds easy, and everybody, all the people who are 20 plus years are probably saying, oh, just come and tell us. But it's a little difficult when you are new in an organization and you feel that, I want to show my value, and I want to show that I want to be here, and I want to prove myself to everybody. And now I need to do this thing, and I can't stay late. I can't take on this extra project that you're asking. And sometimes that's a bit of a hurdle to get over, but I think we definitely need to make sure that we're telling the younger people in our organization that are working on taking the exam that that's okay, and maybe present the option to them instead of expecting them to present it back to you saying, hey, you can leave at 5. You don't have to take on this project if it's a little too much, kind of working with each other as opposed to just waiting for someone else to help.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Anoop or Jan, any insights to add to this conversation about the challenges or the decline that you're seeing?
Well, I guess maybe I can go. And I think a couple of things that you've hit on, Becca, earlier. Certainly, I think the reduced, accounting classes in high school, and I look back at my own career, right? why I got interested in accounting. It was the 11th grade class that I took in accounting, and the professor who I had, and I think you had one of those that big influencers on why you pursue whatever you pursue. So we've got that reduced, and you touched on the STEM. I think introducing accounting as part of the STEM would open up more funding and probably increase the ability to add classes into the high school. Of course, universities. That's a big challenge too. You talked about declining students. Do you know in the last 5 years, the student enrollment in colleges has gone down by about 1.5 million people, okay? It's about 11% decrease from 2011. The other thing is, and I'm glad to see that we have so many leadership on this call, decision makers. One of the big things is salaries. I think we do need to address the salaries that fresh outs are getting. When you're competing with other majors, when you look at the salaries, average about 55 to 60K salaries for accounting major. And when you compare that to majors like, computer science, engineering, that is in the 70s, there's a hard, a difference there. And looking at the, right now, student debt coming out from college, you want a higher rate of return, right? When you go to college. So when you're not able to compete with those other majors, I think that contributes to a little bit of the decline too. So I think it's not a one-prong, two-prong approach. I think it has to be a multiple prong approach to kind of solve this soft trend. And I'm glad you said it's soft trend.
Yes, it is. We can influence it. So Jan, any insights from, working with students every day?
Definitely. The CPA exam is a big commitment. And I just really try to encourage my students and let them know if other people have passed the CPA exam, you can too. Many times we have persons from different CPA exam review companies come and talk to the students about their review courses, the time involved. And sometimes you can just kind of see them just tensing up. Just knowing what's involved with becoming a CPA. But I try to encourage them and tell them that it really is a test of discipline. Can you just focus and study on the CPA exam? If other people have done it, you can do it. It's just you have to really want it and you have to commit. And I tell them that, it's not easy, because if it was easy, everyone would be a CPA. Right. But it is a very respected credential, and it is worth having. So it was good to see that the professors have a big influence on students. And so I just try to encourage students to do it. At the University of Baltimore, we also have assignments that we give students in their last year courses where they start looking at the application, looking at what needs to be done so that if they do have questions and challenges, we can kind of help them so that when they do graduate and get their degree, they know the process and they should be, have a good head start to getting the application done.
That's a great idea, those assignments. When you were talking about, seeing their eyes kind of their glaze over or their bodies tense hearing about the exam review, it reminded me in a conversation I had several years ago where I realized we as veteran CPAs were telling the horror stories. And I thought, man, what if we've seen people do this, if we treated like someone about to have surgery and I told them that, oh, well, my friend had that surgery and it did not go well. And, it's like, don't tell them that. Encourage them. You don't want to be realistic with them, but, how do we encourage and not just wear that badge of honor that, we took this exam and it was this many hours and that's true. Absolutely worth celebrating and true. But how do we encourage them in that process, knowing that they know it's hard, right?
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, Becca. So Dr. Williams hit it right on the nail. Discipline, right? And I'm not ashamed to say this now, that I didn't pass the exam the first time or the second time. I took it quite a few times, but I looked at the difference between when I didn't pass and the time that I did pass. It was discipline. It was just, and I was one of those that took the May and November. So, I passed the November exam. The 4 months leading to the exam, it was the review class, the number of hours I spent. But it is possible. It is possible. It's just that you have to have that discipline. This is what I want to go for, and this is what I want to achieve, and it's achievable. I said, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of touched on the same thing, starting with Jan and Rebecca and Anup. Both kind of just followed up on that. It's hard, it's difficult, and I know that it can scare new people to hear all about the horror stories, but I also think it's important. It's really important to know that it's hard. And I know, you understand that it's hard, it's a big deal, but to talk to people who have been through it and to just hear about the experience that other people had, I feel that it's been more helpful than hurtful, because if you're just like, oh yeah, the exam's difficult, work through it, then you kind of aren't setting yourself up for what you really have to do. And that's really what leads to the lack of dedication and the multiple exams that you're taking. It's sometimes it can be, I knew it was hard, but I didn't know it was that hard. So hearing those stories really, in my opinion, has helped me know that I have the people that I work with, they've been through it. Everybody that I've worked with have also failed and they have taken it at least once. So to know that people fail, it happens. A lot of people fail them, not a lot of people get them the first time around and have great scores. It's a process. It's a lot to go through, and just having a sounding board. I'm also really fortunate that I do have a sounding board at the company that I work for. We're very open about the process and about the struggles that we have constantly about, maybe you can try this. Here's a suggestion. Have you looked at this? Here's what I did. And not all of it's worked for me, but it's still a sounding board, and knowing that there's people who have went through the same thing as me and are also had a difficult time. Like I'm having a difficult time. It's just a lot of brain power and a lot of time. And knowing that, having that there has been tremendous for me. So I think we've all kind of said the same thing, the dedication and the time. It's a lot, but we've all been through it. So just keep with it, and you have a lot of people in your corner helping you and cheering for you.
Definitely, yeah.
And there's a flip side to it too, Nicole. I mean, we talked about our own discipline and to pursue this exam, but the other side of it is the support system, right? I will tell you, and glad to see a lot of partners and C-suite folks on the line here. You have to allow the candidates to give them some time to study. And I was very fortunate that I got that time off from my work to be able to, study, take the time to study, take the time to, take the review class and ultimately sit for the exam. So it's really not only the discipline that comes from within, but it's also the support system around you. You have to have those in order to be successful.
So I'm going to take a few minutes now and walk through the current licensure process real quickly, just so you have an idea, because we really want to equip you, our members, to be able to feel confident, to mentor and help your candidates go through this process. I see someone say, what are some ways we can encourage those who are taking the exam several years after college, and not just the traditional student? And I'll tell you, that's super important, especially in this era, because the recruiting that you need to do is not just the traditional recruiting. If you've always recruited from the same, 3-4 schools, you need to look broader. The community college population, where students are, second career students, there's huge potential in these folks have amazing experience that is different, not in the profession, but really relevant. So I'm going to real quickly take you to our guide to becoming a CPA in Maryland. We created this about, I want to say 8 years ago. I remember sitting in our office and actually drawing the entire process on a whiteboard. And wow, it was a lot. And it took a lot for me to kind of figure it out. But then our amazing design team put this together to really help students through that. And then we got, of course, it blessed by the state board because it is their process, right? It's not ours. We are not the state board. We are not the licensing agency, although we have amazing relationships with them, like Dr. Dan Williams on our call. So I want to, one, tell you about this resource for yourself and for your candidates, and then two, quickly walk you through what it looks like today. And then we're going to spend some time looking at what it is going to change. So the first thing is this is Dpa Exam Checklist. And you'll see that this doesn't say CPA license checklist because you can actually sit for the exam at 120 hours with that bachelor's degree. So you see this first item is, do you have a bachelor's degree or higher? Some of the like 4+1 programs, or even students that are maybe that non-traditional student, maybe they had a degree in art history and they worked for several years in that and then decided, you know what, accounting is where I want to be. And so they're just going to get their accounting certificate, right? They're just going to kind of take some of these courses. So they would have the bachelor's degree. It does not say accounting major, right? They need to make sure that where they got that degree is from an accredited university, of course. And then they would be working on these actual accounting specific courses. And each of these is like a hyperlink that tells you kind of what the course title might be or topics that might be covered. So this is a real simple form that they can make sure that they have those things. I know I want to call this one out in particular because this is one of the areas that in Maryland is a little different. So Dr. Williams, do you want to talk about this ethics course that's required?
Sure, that is probably one of the largest challenges that the board staff has when reviewing applications. In the state of Maryland, we require a 3-hour ethics course. So it has to be a ethics course, a course that is fully devoted to ethics. A lot of times we get courses that are business law, excuse me, business law and ethics or leadership and ethics. And if it's ethics and law, and ethics is included throughout the entire semester, we will accept it. But if it's half the course is law and half the course is ethics, then it's not acceptable. But in Maryland, it is a general ethics course. So it can be business, accounting, philosophy. We do not stipulate what specific type of ethics it is, but it has to be a course that's fully devoted to ethics. And a little later, I will talk about some of the changes that may be occurring in the future with that course.
Thank you, Jan. I also want to call out this item too, because some students don't realize that if they have a graduate level course, that actually is 1.5 times of a undergraduate semester credit. So you get to these 3 credits, 9 credits faster when those are graduate classes. So students don't always realize that. So that's the CPA exam application checklist. So once they kind of know that, they actually go apply with the state board. And so you can see this would open up the page right on the state board's website. There's a core course inventory worksheet from the state board that is helpful for students. So if they click that, it downloads a Word document that they can work through to make sure that they're applying. Now, this is one of the things that people don't realize as well. And actually, I'm so glad I met with Dr. Williams last week to go over this, because this actually said 90 days last week, but she informed me that it's significantly dropped, which is amazing. That's one of those things that I think technology and the speed of how we can review these. So it can take up to 45 days, especially during that peak season, students that have just graduated in December or May, but usually it's not taking that long. And then you're getting that notice to sit, the NTS, you might remember that terminology, and that can take up to a week or a few days to get that from NASBA and then be actually approved to go schedule exam. We also link to the AICPA's blueprints. We are awaiting some new blueprints for the 2024 exam, and I'll show you that in a second. And then, of course, the 4 exam sections. These are the same. Probably the only thing that has changed since you may have taken the exam is that the BEC exam is now 4 hours, or no, audit and VEC. I think they were both shorter before. So the full exam is now 16 hours. I know that was one change that made after even I took the exam. So that continuous exam window I talked about, we call that out here. Great for students, especially when you have that 18th month window, is really helpful. So I'm going to go back to the slide deck now. And actually, I want to address, I'm going to stop sharing so we can see our panelists. And I want to address some of the questions in the chat because these are fantastic. So it says, I've heard from several CPA colleagues and candidates that the annual CPE requirements may be another hindrance for future CPAs with the time commitment, plus horror stories surrounding if the CPE is ever audited. So that's an interesting thing. One of the things I talk to students about is that CPE requirement. And I always, because we're sometimes talking to students that are deciding where they want to go be licensed, which of course, my number one thing is to have them pursue the CPA. My number two thing is have them pursue the CPA in Maryland, right? That's where my focus is. And so I mentioned actually the CPE requirements because in Maryland, we are super fortunate by our board that they are probably one of the most flexible states in terms of CPE. You know me, I work at the MACPA, Director of Development. I'm not on our accounting and finance team, but I take CPE that is relevant and important to the work that I do, and I can stay licensed with that. Now, if I were to go try and sell myself as a tax CPA, that would be a violation of ethics because I'm not educationally qualifying myself through that. But I'm able to stay licensed. So I think actually in Maryland, we have some of the best. Jan, do you have a comment on kind of that barrier for students?
Yes, well, with the continuing education or the work, are they asking about, I'm not sure, the work experience or the continuing education?
You know, the way that was written, I saw that as the continuing education requirements.
Okay, so that would be after they pass the exam.
Correct, yeah, maybe they're anticipating that.
Yes, so CE is required of all professionals once they pass the exam. And yes, the state board does, or the state does do audits. So if you haven't been audited, that's great. But just make sure that you do keep records, good records of your CE, and that you have the documentation in case you are audited. And we have had some audits come before the board, and sometimes the professionals don't have the required ethics. So that is an issue, and we don't want to see that happen. So make sure, again, in Maryland, we do have that 4-hour ethics requirement every 2 years with your renewal. But yeah, we have to have that CE. As you know, that the profession is quickly changing. There's a lot of new topics coming into the profession when we talk about sustainability and ESG, and just with technology and businesses growing, how we do business has changed. So that continuing education is just so critical to ensure that professionals are equipped to handle what's occurring in the profession.
Right. And that CPE can be in really whatever, helps you in your job, right? And
well, we're seeing in the profession, it's not just the technical skills, right? In order for you to continue to grow in the profession, soft skills are becoming so critical: communications, leadership skills. So I still do my CPs, even though I'm not in public accounting. I don't do taxes. Never done audit. But it's important for me to continue to stay ahead. And, I take classes in leadership and whatnot. That helps me in my job. So and then let's face it, we're still a trusted advisor, whether we're in the field, doing taxes or audit. People still look at us as a CPA, as a trusted advisor. They'll come to all sorts of questions for us, and we need to be staying ahead of the changing world.
Yes, and let me just give a plug to the MACPA. And the MACPA has great continuing education, such as the town hall and other workshops and events that they have. So they can make CE fun and interesting.
Thanks, Jen.
I was
did
just
not
about
pay
to
Jen.
do the same thing. I was just about to do the same thing. I don't know what we would have done during tax season specifically without specifically the MACPA. CPE is just a vital part of what we do. And even if there wasn't a requirement, I still feel that a lot of CPAs still would take CPE because it makes more sense to me to talk to someone who has done the research and who has looked into the topic and knows it in and out, front to back, as opposed to me spending hours on hours and hours. I can talk to you and I can get what I need and understand the subject in a smaller amount of time. So I think it's inarguably invaluable to the profession, anybody who's in the profession.
So I'm going to share my screen again because we want to spend some time, and I know this is such a wonderful conversation, and it's something hopefully you're feeling through the screen that I'm really passionate about, and so are Nicole, Anuth, and Jan. And so we could talk about it for a while, but I want to tell you about changes that are coming. And so this is the new licensure model that has been voted on and approved. It's as we like to say, out on the tracks, left the station. And so this will be going into place in January of 2024. And really the purpose behind it was for the CPA exam and the licensure process to more accurately reflect the reality of the profession and how the profession has changed. So you see that core. So that the 3 of the 4 CPA exams are going to be what they call core exams. They're going to be your audit, your accounting, and your tax, with technology built in to all of those. So those are your core. Now the students or the candidates are going to choose a discipline in advance, and that discipline is going to dictate the 4th exam that they take. So you can see the 3 disciplines that they can choose from there: tax compliance and planning, business reporting and analysis, or information systems and controls. Now, what this does not mean is that if I went through the tax compliance and planning, I would, pass the exam and I would become a CPA-tax. No, I am a CPA, and a CPA is a CPA is a CPA. But if I decided after I went through that tax compliance and planning, got my CPA, started working in tax at a firm, and I decided I absolutely hated it. I never wanted to do another tax return again. And I wanted to do information systems and controls. I would be able to do that and still be a CPA. Now, where's the difference? It's the same as right now. I just told you, if I decided I was going to go do tax for someone and hold out as a CPA, that would be an question of my ethics, not a question of whether I have my CPA or I'm licensed to do that, but am I ethically providing the client with the knowledge that I have? I haven't done taxes before. I haven't taken tax CPE. I'm not qualified to do that. That's an ethics conversation, not a I'm licensed to do this. Okay. So let's see. It is going to also change the education requirement. So I want to show you this. This is from AICPA and NASBA. It's actually a slide from this summer. So you can see summer is referenced there, but it's kind of how is this shaping out? What does this look like over the next 3 years, or actually 2 years, if you think about we're almost at 2022. The model curriculum was released. Now this was sent to, it's out there, it's for professors. It is just a model for them to consider for their accounting courses. Jan, I know you've, probably gone through this model curriculum. Any thoughts on what you're seeing and what you as a professor are kind of preparing for at this point?
Yes, it will be a big change in education and in the curriculum. And currently the board is looking at the new exam, the structure of the new exam. Also, we've discussed in education the gap analysis that the AICPA released earlier this year, which talks about the gaps that they see in the education that students are receiving and what skills the profession is looking for when they hire with their new hires. So we are in education, looking at the model curriculum, looking at how we need to change classes, the content of those classes. And additionally, we are looking at with the state board on what educational requirements we will have going forward. And that's something that we have discussed at the NASPA annual meeting, at the NASPA regional meetings, and we've talked with other state boards about, what does the future hold for CPA educational requirements?
Yeah, because there's a lot of that changing as well, potentially with the UAA model curriculum. So I'm going to get to that in just a second. One other thing I wanted to point out is the CPA Exam Blueprint. So right now the CPA Exam Practice Analysis is going out. So you might have heard they were looking for CPAs in practice, particularly those that directly supervise some of those first year, second year people that would be going through the CPA process of, what are the skill sets do they really need and how are we building that into the exam? But the CPA Exam Blueprint is going to be hopefully exposed in the winter of 2022. So we eagerly look forward to that. I was on with Stevenson University students on Tuesday talking through some of these things. And I had to tell them a lot of, I think it's going to look like this. It's maybe going to have this, but we don't have that blueprint that's really going to be more detailed. So we eagerly look forward to that, and we'll happily probably do another town hall or especially thing for students and educators and candidates around that. And then we talked about some of that licensure, that educational requirements. And the UAA is something that has been approved in a model change as well. And so you can see here, Jan put together this amazing list of, here's Maryland's educational requirements to sit for the exam and become licensed. And here's what's been approved through the UAA model. So Jan, do you want to talk a little bit about what the board is thinking about? Because this would be an actual change that the board would have to make, particularly, statute change potentially, correct?
Well, with this, we would have to propose those changes, yes, to be voted on and approved by the legislature. And currently in the pink column, you see these are the current Maryland requirements. And then in the blue, you see what the NASPA approved UAA model rules. And so states now are looking at their rules and compare them to the UAA model rules. Now, the UAA model rules are serves as a blueprint or as a guide. So some states will accept UAA model rules as written, but most states will kind of cater and adjust theirs to be similar to the UAA model rules. So currently, if we look at the differences in the two, and since we don't have a lot of time, I'm just going to say that the major changes relate with cost and managerial accounting. That is a current course that is required. Under UAA model rules, it would be an elective course. Currently, Maryland does not require an accounting information systems course, but the UAA model rules does include a required AIS course. So that's something that the board's discussing. Also, the ethics that I mentioned earlier. Currently, Maryland just has a general ethics course. It can be any type of ethics course. UAA model rules is looking at either requiring an accounting or business ethics. And if you see in blue, under the 4 courses for electives, it can be an accounting elective there, or it can fall under the business courses as a business ethics course. In addition to the changes with costs, AIS and ethics, UAA model rules also includes an increase of 9 credit hours for internships. And that's really great because we want students to have this experience. So the ability for them to have up to 9 hours of internships would be really good. And then many students need that money also to pay tuition. So that would be helpful. With those 9 hours of internships, 3 can count as an ethics elective, and then 3 can count as a business elective there. So those are the main differences that we are looking at. And I have recently, as the education member of the board, I have recently surveyed the accounting chairpersons in the state of Maryland to get feedback, because the board wants to know how does academia deem these rules, what courses do they currently have, and what kind of adjustment would it have to be for their curriculum. So we're trying to, if you, at the previous slide that Rebecca showed, it was end of 2022 for these legislative and regulatory changes to be made, but we've started to discuss that at each board meeting so that we can ensure that we're making the right decision for future CPAs.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for your service on that board. I know that's a big time commitment and not something that you get paid for, right?
Right.
But thank you so much for your service for our profession there. I opened up a couple more polls. I know we're just at time, but I would love to know what stood out to you, insights from the session. I kept that future town hall topic ideas open. And then I asked, did you know the process was changing? Because I think that's one of the things. This is going to be, there's a quote that Tom Hood used to always say, that all change is linguistic. And so this change is going to need to have communication around and a common language around. And so we wanted to bring this to you all. We'll continue to bring it to you all, continue to bring it to our students and candidates, as well as we really look to change the future of our profession and grow the pipeline. I did want to quickly look through the chat comments to see if there's anything about, yep. So I see my 150-hour folks saying, you know, are we kidding ourselves if we're not saying that's not part of the problem? I absolutely agree. I'm not saying that it's not. It was the number 11. Now, I'm not saying that maybe was false or anything, but I will tell you that is a huge thing to unravel, because right now we have what we worked probably 20 years on, which is reciprocity. And so as soon as the first state, because we're a state-based license, undoes that and says you don't need 150 hours to be a CPA in our state, that state's CPAs now cannot practice in other states. Because they are not uniform. So that's a hard thing to unravel. And I know Barry Melanson would say the exact same thing. And I've heard him say it several times. That doesn't mean it's not worth pursuing. But I think someone's also said the organizations need the people sooner. There's no requirement that students have to have 150 hours for you to hire them. I got hired without 150 hours and before the exam. And you can help that student pay for that extra hours if they're working for you. Might take them a little bit longer because you can only take one course kind of at a time when you're working full time. But I'm not aware, and I think in this war for talent, I know especially the largest firms have always had that 150-hour requirement. And I think that's probably going to have to change if we want to recruit to the profession and have talent in our organizations sooner.
Hey, Becca, if I could add one, I know we're running out of time, but about a month ago, I was visiting Indiana, and I talked to a group of students there. And I can tell you, majority of those students, they're just about to graduate and sit for the exam. That I was very happy to hear that. But majority of those students managed to complete those 150 hours in 4 years. They had a lot of AP credits that they were able to bring through. So I understand and I hear the 150, but I can tell you that a lot of the students are able to complete that in the 4-year program.
Yeah, those AP credits, the summer classes, double majors. That's how I did it. I had a double major, and so I had a couple credits to get after I graduated, but just a few actually. And then I see somebody asking about what if you started the process before 2024 and you're continuing the process after 2024? And that is a fantastic question. And it's one of those things we saw in the timeline that they have, I believe, released the candidate transition. Actually, I have not personally seen that. Jan, do you have insight into what that transition policy is?
Yeah, so they do have a mapping based on what sections you've already passed and what section you would have to take on the new exam. For example, if you have not passed auditing in the current exam, then you would take auditing on the new exam. Same thing for tax, reg. If you've passed reg, or if you have not passed reg, then you would take the tax. And then if you have not passed FARS, you would take the accounting section. If you have not passed BEC, you would take one of the 3 disciplines.
Gotcha. So really BEC and I was curious that if BEC is all the exams are changing, but that's the one that's kind of being replaced because a lot of that content is being built in because BEC contained, sometimes when I talk to students, I said the BEC was kind of like all the other stuff we want you to know, but we're not sure where to put it exam. So yeah, yes. So, okay, well, I know we went about 5 minutes over and I think this was a really valuable conversation. Again, one that I think could continue to keep on going. I have up here our foundation. We are super excited to be working to renewing our foundation. I had a robust conversation with our board on Tuesday about scholarships and how we support students and how we support educators through all of these changes as well. And our swearing in ceremony, of course, tonight. Real quick, because it's just so cool. If you're still on, I want to show you this because we talked about that pipeline and how are we getting students interested in accounting even at a young age. And this is a new wall at JA BizTown where we are promoting the CPA profession and designation to 5th graders. Every Baltimore City 5th grader goes through this program. Several of the school system, Howard and Baltimore County as well. And so we're super passionate about this and we invite you to join us in promoting our profession, sharing the wonderful career path that it offers. And we're excited to continue to do this with you all. Thank you so much for joining and we'll see you next month. I believe it's December 17th. And we're going to be focusing on tax and some of the policy changes or preview for tax season. So see you then.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.